The journey of the very first Americans began during the Ice Age, more than 20,000 years ago, when the Earth was locked in ice and vast glaciers spread across the northern hemisphere. During this period, sea levels dropped, exposing a land bridge that connected Asia to North America, today known as Beringia. This natural bridge became the passageway for small groups of people leaving their Siberian homeland and stepping into a continent that had never seen human footprints before. These people are known as Paleo-Indians, hunter-gatherers who followed herds of giant animals such as mammoths, ancient bison, and caribou to survive. Life in such a harsh environment required not just strength but also ingenuity and adaptability. Their tools, especially the finely crafted Clovis spear points, reveal advanced skill and creativity. Far from being primitive, they were bold explorers who opened a new world. With courage and resilience, they laid the very first foundations of human history in the Americas. After the flourishing of the Clovis culture, both its traces and the great animals they hunted vanished from the archaeological record. Scholars still debate the reasons. Perhaps climate change, perhaps overhunting, or a combination of both. Whatever the cause, this disappearance forced native communities to adapt once again. As the Ice Age ended, melting glaciers gave way to forests, rivers, and fertile plains. People shifted from hunting only large game to more diverse ways of survival, cultivating crops, managing wild plants, and hunting smaller animals. This transformation marked a turning point. Instead of decline, it was the beginning of a new chapter. Out of necessity, they laid the groundwork for more complex societies, evolving from scattered bands into organized villages and trade centers. The end of Clovis was not an end at all. It was the dawn of new civilizations that would shape the Americas for millennia. Over time, indigenous peoples created diverse and sophisticated cultures across North America. Among the most remarkable were the mound builders of the Mississippi Valley, who constructed monumental earthworks that served as temples, burial sites, and elite residences. At Poverty Point in Louisiana, ca. 3500 BCE, vast earthen ridges were carefully aligned, and trade networks stretched from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Later, the Adena and Hopewell cultures thrived in the Ohio Valley, building earthworks in geometric and animal shapes, some aligned with lunar and solar cycles. Their artistry, jewelry, pottery, ceremonial objects reveals a deep spiritual worldview and far-reaching trade in the arid Southwest. The ancestral Pueblo, Anasazi, built cliff dwellings and multi-storied stone villages at Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon. They created underground ceremonial chambers called kivas, farmed corn, beans, and squash, and maintained wide trade networks exchanging turquoise, pottery, and textiles. Meanwhile, in the Mississippi Valley, Cahokia emerged as the largest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico. At its height around 1100 CE, tens of thousands lived there, and Monk's Mound, over 100 feet tall, symbolized its power. Cahokia was a hub of agriculture, trade, and religion, and its influence reached far across the eastern U.S. on the Great Plains. Nomadic tribes such as the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Comanche depended on the buffalo for nearly every aspect of life. With the introduction of the horse by the Spanish, their way of life was transformed. Hunting became more efficient, travel faster, and warfare more dynamic. In the Northeast, the Iroquois Confederacy, Haudenosaunee, united 5, later 6 nations into one of the earliest democracies in the world. Their council system of governance influenced none other than the framers of the U.S. Constitution. The arrival of Europeans in the late 15th century marked the beginning of profound upheaval. In 1492, Christopher Columbus's voyage opened the door for exploration and conquest. Spanish explorers like Juan Ponce de Leon and Hernando de Soto pushed deep into native territories in search of gold and glory. At first, exchanges between natives and Europeans included trade and cautious curiosity. But these encounters soon soured as cultural clashes and territorial ambitions grew. The deadliest weapon Europeans carried was not steel or gunpowder, but disease. Smallpox, measles, and influenza tore through native populations who had no immunity. In some regions, up to 90% of the population perished within decades. Entire villages were wiped out. Alongside disease came warfare. In New England, King Philip's War, 1675, pitted the Wampanoag against English colonists. In the Southwest, the Pueblo Revolt of 1680 temporarily expelled the Spanish from New Mexico. These struggles revealed both the vulnerability of native peoples to foreign forces and their determination to defend their lands and ways of life. In the 18th and 19th centuries, native peoples faced mounting pressure as European colonies expanded and the young United States pushed westward. Leaders like Tecumseh, a Shawnee chief, dreamed of uniting tribes into a confederacy strong enough to resist encroachment. Though his vision ultimately failed, his legacy of resistance endured. On the Great Plains, Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse of the Lakota led warriors to victory at the Battle of Little Bighorn, 1876, while Geronimo of the Apache waged relentless campaigns in the Southwest. Yet the tide of history was against them. In the 1830s, the Indian Removal Act forced entire nations, the Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole, off their ancestral lands. The brutal journey west, remembered as the Trail of Tears, claimed thousands of lives through hunger, disease, and exhaustion. By the end of the 19th century, nearly all Native Americans were confined to reservations, far from their original homelands. They lost not only land but also traditions and ways of life that had endured for millennia. Resistance and tragedy became intertwined. Heroic defiance on one hand, devastating loss on the other. Despite centuries of oppression, indigenous peoples never disappeared. They safeguarded their culture through stories, songs, rituals, and languages passed from one generation to the next. Today, many native nations are experiencing a cultural renaissance. Programs to revitalize traditional languages are growing, ensuring voices once nearly silenced are heard again. Powwows, with their music, dance, and vibrant regalia, serve not just as celebrations but as declarations of identity and pride. At the same time, native movements to protect sacred lands and the environment highlight their enduring bond with nature. From rivers to mountains, they see the land as both ancestral heritage and responsibility to future generations. Politically, tribes continue to assert their sovereignty, gaining recognition as self-governing nations within the United States and Canada. Their story is not merely one of loss, it is also one of survival and resilience. Native Americans were the first stewards of this land, and their spirit still lives in the earth, the waters, and the skies. It stands as living proof that, despite centuries of hardship, the spirit of native peoples will never be extinguished.